Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 and our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are utilizing the Johnson edition and we turn now to poem 489, We Pray to Heaven. Now, Emily as iconoclast, let's start there. We already know that Emily is questioning all of the stuff that she was raised with, especially theologically, as she comes into her writing life. And in that regards, the question of afterlife and the question of heaven is central to Emily's thinking. Now, our assumptions is that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily is our playlist. I'm hopeful that you worked through our set of introductory comments where we talked about Emily as iconoclast, just like Whitman, just like Emerson, just like Thoreau. All of those transcendentalists of this time period are challenging the assumed ideas of any number of, premises, of course, theologically being one of them. I'm hopeful as well that you've already read the preceding 488 poems. We just finished with 488. Myself was formed a carpenter. And if you have, then you know that Emily loves to ask questions about conventional beliefs. For example, if God is omnipresent, that is to say everywhere, then how can God have a place called heaven? How are you going to place a being that is everywhere in a single place? Because the assumption is, of course, that once one dies, one goes, one hopes, to heaven, in Emily's theological paradigm, to visit and meet God. Where is this place? And how do you put a being that has no face in a place? Now, Emily will ask a question like this as a young child, and then she'll begin to flesh it out through her poetry. By the way, questions of this poem. Emily is one of the great poets of the question, right? And she loves to ask these questions so subtly. Notice, by the way, it isn't I pray, it's we pray. Let's enjoy the poem. We pray to heaven, we prate of heaven. Relate when neighbors die, at what o'clock to heaven they fled. Who saw them, wherefore fly? Is heaven a place? A sky? A tree? Location's narrow ways for ourselves. Unto the dead there's no geography, but state, endowal, focus. Where omnipresence fly? Now, it will be in 1929 that Albert Brumling's famous hymn, I'll Fly Away, one of the most famous hymns in all of theology, is constructed. You have to wonder if Brumling knew it at all about Emily in this poem. Notice she'll begin by almost repeating herself, but she'll change the word from pray to prate. Of course, when we think of pray, we think of poem 65 and 171. Three of these, notice, we's here. We pray to heaven. The repetition of heaven, three heavens. We pray. Notice all the dashes of this poem. It's as if she's trying to construct almost breathlessly the way she's thinking about, let me get this straight. It's almost like that. It's almost like, let me get this straight. So you're telling me this. We play this game, if you wish to call it a theological game of prayer. We pray to heaven. We pray to heaven. It's an interesting word. Gossip, share, gossip to heaven. Relate. The sound, the tone sound of this poem is so much fun. Later on your own, read it out loud and just enjoy reading this poem out loud. Relate when neighbors die. In other words, okay, we lose our neighbor. Emily, of course, saw her fair share of this, right? And somebody dying or whatever.
Corbin
and
Martinez,
so she seems to be
please come to
suggesting,
the office.
okay,
Corbin
we know
Martinez,
this is how this
the
is
office
happening,
right
right?
now.
We know that somebody has died. We relate. We relate what? Well, we relate that they're going to heaven, right? Because they were here. Now they're somewhere else. They're in another place, right? Relate when neighbors die. At what o'clock to heaven, notice again the third heaven, they fled. Of course, you would say fly, only she's going to use the word fly in the next line. Who saw them? Wherefore fly? In other words, flying. Of course, we have to smile that just a few poems ago, you will recall, that we played the game of I heard a fly buzz when I died, right? So Emily is obviously playing around here with a wonderful image that we've already heard from her already in regards to death and flies, okay? And here she is saying, okay, but obviously the word fly here is a different word, right? Wherefore fly? And of course the last word of the poem, right? Is heaven a place? Now it's at this point that she'll ask the real question. And it's a theologically intriguing question. Is heaven a place, a sky, a tree? By the way, originally, when published in 1929, there was a variation of this that actually didn't say tree but said face. Is heaven a place, a sky, a face? Which is, I think, fascinating as well. Here it's tree. In other words, where are you going to put this idea of heaven? Now, did Emily know her Spinoza? It's possible, you know, that great philosophic thinker of the omnipresent spirit and all of that. Is heaven a place, location, a sky? I mean, how do you talk about the sky as location? Or a tree, something, can we say, grounded, we might say. Obviously, native stories, Native American stories, often will speculate about trees and immortality or afterlife. Locations narrow way, and of course the narrow here is referencing to the Sermon on the Mount, and broad is the way that leadeth unto death, narrow is the way that leadeth to life, is for, and notice capitalized, ourselves. I love how she pulls you right into this poem. Unto the dead, there's no geography. I find this a remarkable line. Of all, you know, Emily writes so many of these lines that we have a tendency to just kind of look over them and go, yeah, another Emily line. But what poet you've ever read can say, unto the dead, there's no geography? What an amazing line. Because technically, of course, we don't know what happens when we die. Although in our theological stories, we will talk about heaven. Really, where is it? So are you talking about the sky? Is that what you're talking about? No. Okay, good. Well, then where are we talking? Where we go, quote unquote, and if it's we who? Well, our soul. Oh, okay. So where? Where is this? She'll finish, but this is what we do know when people die. There is a state, the coffin, right? Endowal. By the way, this is the only use of her word, endowal. Focus. Where? And then she'll say it. Omnipresence. Fly. Like, exactly where does the spirit or the soul go? Well, what are we going to do with a poem like this at 2A? I think it's, for sure we can say about this poem, that it's hard to understand, to be able to express ideas that are translinguistic, beyond words, right? And this question of what happens after death is one that, I won't say haunted Emily, but certainly consumed her, no doubt. She wanted to know the answer to this question, and obviously she struggled with the answers that were provided. At 2B, I love the question marks of this poem, and the way the question marks kind of set up her rhetorical questions. At 3A, well, I mentioned the Albert Brumling hymn, I'll Fly Away, in 1929. At 3B, finally, what do you think happens after death? And to what degree do you understand the concept of deity and place, as in heaven? Thank you.